If you're serious about growing stronger, healthier plants with less watering, fewer inputs, and soil that improves every season, this method will change how you garden forever. Before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to the Evergreen Garden channel and drop a comment below sharing what you grow, because this is the kind of deep, practical gardening knowledge we build together here, season after season. Why feeding plants from below works better than surface composting? Most gardeners focus on feeding soil from the top, spreading compost and hoping nutrients trickle down. The reality is that roots don't wait patiently for that process to happen. They actively seek moisture, biology, and nutrition. An underground compost pit places organic matter exactly where roots want it, creating a slow-release feeding system that works every day of the year. Instead of nutrients washing away or drying out, they stay protected underground where microbes, worms, and fungi can do their job uninterrupted. This approach mimics natural forest systems where decomposition happens below the surface and feeds plants continuously. What an underground compost pit actually is, and why it lasts for years. An underground compost pit is a buried organic matter reservoir placed near or between plants, not directly under the stem, but close enough for feeder roots to access it. Think of it as a long-term pantry for your soil life. Unlike surface compost piles that break down quickly and lose volume, a buried pit decomposes slowly because moisture levels stay stable and temperatures are moderated. A well-built pit can feed surrounding plants for 12 to 24 months, depending on materials used and climate conditions, making it one of the most efficient soil-building techniques available to home gardeners. Choosing the right location makes or breaks this method. Placement matters more than size. The ideal spot is about 30 to 40 centimeters away from the main stem of a tree or large shrub, or directly between vegetable plants spaced at least 60 centimeters apart. This distance prevents stem rot while still allowing roots to colonize the nutrient zone. For raised beds, placing one pit per square meter works well. In orchard systems, one pit can support multiple trees if positioned strategically along the drip line where feeder roots are most active. So, let's talk about how deep and wide your pit should be for maximum benefit. You see, depth really controls how long the pit will last. A pit that's too shallow, well, it breaks down too fast and, honestly, tends to dry out. On the other hand, if the pit is too deep, it might actually sit below the active root zones, which isn't ideal. The sweet spot really is somewhere between 40 to 50 centimeters deep and 30 to 40 centimeters wide. This depth keeps all those materials nice and moist while still being accessible to roots. Now, if you're working with sandy soils, going just a bit deeper helps retain nutrients. But in clay soils, it's best to keep the depth closer to 40 centimeters, just to prevent waterlogging. Next up, let's cover what you should actually put inside the pit and, well, the ratios that really work. Balance is absolutely everything underground. A reliable ratio is 3 parts carbon-rich material to 1 part nitrogen-rich material by volume. Carbon materials include things like dry leaves, shredded cardboard, small sticks, sawdust, and straw. Nitrogen materials, on the other hand, are your kitchen scraps, fresh grass clippings, green weeds, and manure. For example, you could layer 3 buckets of dry leaves with 1 bucket of vegetable scraps and, say, 1 small bucket of well-aged manure. Adding a thin layer of topsoil between layers introduces native microbes and, honestly, speeds up decomposition without causing any unpleasant odors. Now, moisture management is really the secret to year-round feeding. Water, you see, activates everything in this system. After you've filled the pit, give it a thorough watering until the contents are evenly moist but not flooded. The goal here is the consistency of a wrung-out sponge. In dry climates, covering the pit with a thick mulch layer helps reduce evaporation and keeps decomposition active even during a drought. But if you're in a rainy climate, placing coarse material, like small branches at the bottom, improves drainage and prevents those pesky anaerobic conditions. Over time, roots begin to interact with the pit in fascinating ways. Within just a few weeks, soil organisms start to move in, and they're soon followed by fine feeder roots. These roots aren't only absorbing nutrients, they're also exchanging sugars with microbes, which really speeds up decomposition. As the materials in the pit break down, they release things like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, trace minerals, and organic acids, all of which help improve nutrient availability. Over several months, the pit transforms into a living sponge, holding water during dry spells and releasing it slowly to the surrounding soil. This process, you'll notice, can dramatically reduce the need for irrigation. So let's look at a few practical examples for vegetables, fruit trees, and ornamentals. In a vegetable garden, if you place a compost pit between tomatoes, spaced about 60 centimeters apart, it can actually support both plants for the whole season. You just fill the pit with kitchen scraps, a bit of shredded cardboard, and grass clippings, keeping to a 3-to-1 ratio. Then top it all off with soil and mulch. For banana plants or heavy feeders like pumpkins, you'll want one pit per plant filled with a higher nitrogen content, closer to a 2-to-1 carbon to nitrogen ratio. This produces noticeably larger leaves and honestly much stronger growth. For fruit trees, digging a pit along the drip line and refilling it annually creates steady growth without causing too much top growth, which can attract pests. Maintenance, well, it's really minimal, but timing does matter. One of the biggest advantages of underground compost pits is, just how little maintenance they actually need. You only need to check moisture every few months, especially during the dry periods. After about a year, the pit will settle as materials break down. At that point, topping it up with fresh organic matter extends its life. No need to dig a new hole. Just remember, avoid refilling during peak flowering if you're using high nitrogen materials, as this can push leafy growth at the expense of fruiting. The long-term soil transformation is something you can genuinely see. After 2 seasons, gardeners often notice the soil becomes darker and more crumbly, radiating out from the pit. Earthworm populations increase dramatically, root systems expand, and plants show improved resilience to heat and stress. This isn't, a quick fix. It's really a permanent upgrade to how your soil functions. Each pit becomes a biological engine, improving soil structure, fertility, and water efficiency year after year. This is the kind of gardening knowledge that compounds over time, just like good soil. If you found value here, do consider subscribing to Evergreen Garden for more practical, no-nonsense techniques that actually work. Share this with a fellow gardener who's perhaps tired of constant feeding and watering, and leave a comment telling us what you'd like to grow better next season.